free agent, treated John Harper, SNY.TV, Twitter, on a day when 21-year-old Ronald Acuna Jr. became the youngest player ever to sign a $100 million contract. As major league teams continue doling out piles of money in unprecedented fashion, a veteran of baseball's labor wars nevertheless saw the trend as a triumph for the owners. Ex-Met and Yankee David Cohn, in fact, pointedly recalled a speech that Curt Flood, the pioneer of free agency, gave to a subsequent generation of players in the 1990s that ultimately would go on to strike in 1994, forcing the cancellation of the World Series that year. Curt told us back then, "Don't let them put the genie back in the bottle," Cohn recalled at Yankee Stadium on Tuesday. That was his quote. "And I have to say, they're getting it back in a little bit. She's got a couple of legs back in the bottle." On the surface that may sound silly to most baseball fans, who see more young players becoming rich beyond their wildest dreams than ever before in the sport. And indeed, that's largely the view as well from the other side of the aisle, if you will. Ask executives and even former executives about this explosion of contract extensions around the game this spring, and the standard answer comes back in the form of a question as well. As in, what's not to like? "I think it's great for the game," says Dan O'Dowd, MLB Network analyst and former Rockies GM. "What I think some people may be losing perspective about is that we're talking about life-changing money for these players. There's no disputing that, whether it's $100 million for Acuna, $120 million for Xander Bogaerts, $52 million for Randall Grichuk, or $48 million for German Marquez, to name only the deals done all in the last couple of days." However, player advocates point out that in most cases the players are potentially leaving a lot more money on the table, and the why of it all raises obvious questions about the future of free agency, and more to the point, the potential in 2021 for the first real ugliness at the bargaining table since that infamous strike in 1994. Indeed, then, why now for all these extensions? The consensus among several baseball people contacted for this story comes down to this: it's the fallout from the last 2 winters of free agency, as analytics have devalued older players and dictated more measured, emotionless evaluations by teams, resulting in fewer long-term deals and many a veteran player left without a job. Players and even agents are looking down the road and seeing the money might not be there like it once was, especially for players in their 30s, one current team executive said. "Teams are taking advantage of that. You'd be stupid not to. It's big money in some cases, but it's team-friendly compared to what players have gotten by holding out for free agency in the past." Okay, let's get to the issues, starting with the biggest beef from the players' side. Even if analytics have led GMs to make smarter choices than in the past and avoid the huge, long-term deals that have rarely worked out for teams, player advocates point to what they see as the ever-increasing gap between revenues in a flourishing sport and the luxury tax threshold that has become something of a soft salary cap. One person close to the situation estimates that revenues have increased over the last several years by about 80%. At the same time, the luxury tax threshold has increased by only about 30%. The result is teams aren't spending on players at nearly the rate revenues have increased, the person said. And there's no salary floor to force lower-end teams to spend, but the power teams like the Yankees, Red Sox, and Cubs have used the threshold as a reason to reset their tax rates, and when you take them out of the market, you don't have much of a free agency. It's not as if those power teams haven't spent at all in recent years, but the point is legitimate, in terms of spending not keeping up with revenues. That gap, combined with the devaluing of older players, has essentially changed the nature of baseball's economic structure. That is, for many players it's no longer worth it to wait 6 years, while making close to minimum salary for 3 years before reaching arbitration, to reach what was once the promised land of free agency. Which is what Cohn, who was a very issue-engaged player rep in '94, was referring to in saying the genie is at least somewhat back in the bottle. Like many others, he says the players have themselves to blame for being bullied at the bargaining table, especially in the last collective bargaining agreement, when they prioritized quality-of-life issues like personal chefs in each clubhouse over the core economic issues. Now they've come to realize that one thing leads to another for players, Cohn said. It's not just about the top end. The lower end affects the middle class. Say if minimum wages are too low, and the threshold is too low on the luxury tax, essentially you have a luxury tax that acts like something very close to a hard cap. With no floor, nobody wants another strike. The game's healthy, and it's always much better if you can bargain in good faith. But with analytics and big-time data in the owner's hands, there are adjustments that should legitimately be made. After 6 years in the majors, a lot of these players are past 30. They've worked hard to attain free agency, and now the data is against them. The system is skewed against them. Just because young players are getting extensions, is not really equitable because the owners have all the leverage in that situation. The way for players to fight it is to make it about regaining their rights. It's not complaining about money, it's about freedom. People are losing their jobs because of a system that needs to be adjusted, out of fairness. Teams don't want to pay older players, yet young players have no rights for 3 years. Aaron Judge making $650,000, when he's worth millions in surplus value to the Yankees, affects someone like Adam Jones not being able to find a job or get what he should in the open market. The obvious solution, on the players' side, is to fight for higher minimums in the pre-arbitration years, as well as lowering the free agency requirement to, say, 4 years, so more players reach the market while still in their prime. But what would it take for owners to agree to dramatic changes? That depends who you ask. People on both sides of the issue agree the sport is very healthy financially, with those aforementioned revenues rising, to the point where a seemingly dead-end franchise like the Miami Marlins sold for $1.2 billion last year. Not surprisingly, those with a management point of view are more optimistic than those on the players' side. Greg Clifton has a unique perspective as a former agent for players such as Tom Glavine and David Wells, who now handles arbitration cases for teams as part of a law firm in Arizona. And while he admits to the potential for difficult negotiations ahead between players and owners, he believes both sides have too much to lose to ever reach the point of another work stoppage. At a certain point, both sides recognize it's not good for the sport if one side has too much of an advantage, Clifton said. I think it's a good sign that you're seeing the Players Association being willing to open up on pace of play changes and communicate with MLB, and I think you'll see both sides work towards some type of compromise on the key issues. In other words, perhaps even the owners know there's a point where beating up on the players in bargaining in recent years reaches a point of diminishing returns. Meanwhile, O'Dowd agrees that even 25 years later, the memory of the '94 strike will act as a deterrent toward another work stoppage because everybody who lived through it knows it's too much to lose, especially when the game is flourishing as it is. I think you have smart people on both sides, and as long as they're communicating, something good will come out of that. All of that sounds logical, yet the history between the sides, even after 2 decades of labor peace, suggests that it would take the threat of a strike to get owners to agree to significant changes in the system. Cohn is hopeful that a sense of fairness will prevail, but he also believes that players will be much more ready to fight at the next negotiations. Exactly how far they'd be willing to carry that fight remains to be seen, depending whether the same financial trends in baseball continue over the next couple of years. One thing seems sure, free agency may never look quite the same if the players can't force that genie out of the bottle again. March 30, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA, New York Mets second baseman Jeff McNeil, 6, hits an RBI single against the Washington Nationals during the 8th inning at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Brad Mills. USA Today Sports. Brad Mills. Jeff McNeil is not in the Mets lineup on Wednesday night because he tweaked his knee a little bit during Tuesday night's game, manager Mickey Callaway said. Callaway added the knee had been bothering McNeil ever since he banged it into the fence in spring training. McNeil will be available to enter later in the game on Wednesday and should be back in the lineup on Thursday for the Mets' home opener against the Nationals, Callaway said, adding that there are no tests scheduled for McNeil at this point. March 31, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA. New York Mets starting pitcher Zach Wheeler, 45, delivers a pitch during the first inning against the Washington Nationals at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Tommy Gilligan. USA Today Sports, Tommy Gilligan. In advance of their series against the Nationals at Citi Field, with their home opener on Thursday, the Mets have made a change to their starting rotation. In a move manager Mickey Callaway hinted at on Tuesday, the Mets have flipped number 3 starter Zach Wheeler and no. 4 starter Steven Matz in the rotation, which will serve to break up the left-handers, Matz and Jason Vargas, who is the no. 5 starter. With the adjustment, the Mets' rotation order will be Jacob deGrom, starting on Wednesday night, Noah Syndergaard, starting on Thursday afternoon against Steven Strasburg, Matz, Wheeler, and Vargas. March 9, 2019, Fort Myers, FL, USA. New York Mets center fielder Brandon Nimmo, 9 triples in a run in the 5th inning of the spring training game against the Boston Red Sox at JetBlue Park. Mandatory credit, Jason Vinlove. USA Today Sports, Jason Vinlove. It appears Brandon Nimmo did not suffer any serious damage to his left hand as he's in Wednesday's lineup against the Marlins, starting in left field and batting leadoff. Nimmo was hit by a pitch in his left hand in the 7th inning Tuesday night and left the game. X-rays on his hand Tuesday night were negative. Everything went well Wednesday with a grip test and Nimmo felt fine swinging a bat before Wednesday's game. "We're in a good spot," Nimmo said. "Not much soreness at all. It doesn't affect how I go to the ball. I was really happy with that this morning." April 2, 2019, Miami, Florida, USA. New York Mets manager Mickey Callaway, 36, prior to a game against the Miami Marlins at Marlins Park. Mandatory credit, Steve Mitchell. USA Today Sports, Steve Mitchell. The Mets bullpen nearly let a 6-2 lead evaporate against the Marlins on Tuesday night, as most of the pitchers who came out of the pen struggled. And while Mickey Callaway's bullpen management was questioned during the game, something he revealed after the game made it even more curious. Here are 3 reasons why his bullpen management, which must improve if the Mets want to contend in a division that is expected to be the toughest in baseball, left a lot to be desired on Tuesday night. Lugo was left in while struggling, and sick. Nimmo hit by pitch in 7th inning 0 hours 0 minutes and 25 seconds. Nimmo got his first RBI of the season, but it came at a cost, as he had to come out of the game after being hit by a pitch on the hand. Mets outfielder Brandon Nimmo left Tuesday's game in the 7th inning after he was hit by a pitch on the left hand. X-rays came back negative, but he is expected to be re-evaluated again on Wednesday. The pitch was initially called a foul ball, but the outfielder was visibly in pain, so manager Mickey Callaway challenged the call and was successful, leading to Nimmo being awarded first base and the runner scoring from third as the Mets extended their lead to 6-2. Mets hold on to beat Marlins 0 hours 1 minute and 31 seconds. The Mets jumped out to an early lead, scoring 5 runs in the first. Lugo was shaky in relief, leading to a clutch double play to end the game. The Mets jumped out to a 5-0 lead in the first inning on Tuesday and survived a scare in the late innings, with Justin Wilson getting a game-ending double play to work out of a jam for a 5-out save and a 6-5 win over the Marlins. Greater than box score. 7 things to know about Tuesday's Game 1. Amed Rosario, fresh off his go-ahead RBI base hit the night before, delivered the big blow in the first inning with a 2 RBI double to put them up 4-0. He finished the game 1 for 4. Mets react to 6-5 win 0 hours 0 minutes and 25 seconds. The Mets react to the late inning runs scored by the Marlins. Wilson had a funny reaction to the last pitch of the game. The Mets held off a late scare by the Miami Marlins on Tuesday with Justin Wilson on the mound for the final 5 outs in a 6-5 victory. Mickey Callaway explained after the game why he went with Wilson in that spot, and Wilson also reacted to getting out of the jam he created in the 9th inning to win the game. Mets jump out to 5-0 led 0 hours 0 minutes and 28 seconds. The Mets got off to a great start in the first inning against the Marlins. Their bats came alive, leading to 5 runs scoring in the first. The Mets burst out for 5 runs in the first inning behind RBI hits from Wilson Ramos, Dominic Smith and Am Rosario to give themselves an early 5-0 lead against the Marlins. Mickey Callaway said Monday that Todd Frazier, who has been out since late February due to a strained oblique, will begin a rehab assignment later this week. Meanwhile, Jed Lowry recently began fielding ground balls and swinging a bat from both sides of the plate, though he has yet to be cleared to run at full speed. Lowry has been idle most of the spring as he continues to deal with a capsule sprain in his left knee. If I'm guessing, I'd say Frazier will be back next week, while Lowry remains out through most of April. In time, though, once Frazier and Lowry return, the Mets will need shuffle playing time around the diamond and force Callaway and GM Brodie Van Wagenen to make some difficult decisions about the overall roster and daily lineup construction. February 18, 2019, Port St. Lucie, FL, USA, New York Mets, third baseman Todd Frazier, 21, throws during drills at First Data Field. Mandatory credit, Steve Mitchell. USA Today Sports, Steve Mitchell. The Mets are another step closer in getting 2 veterans back to their roster. Third baseman Todd Frazier and catcher Travis d'Arnaud both said on Tuesday that they will begin rehab assignments with High St. Lucie on Thursday. The 2 injured veterans, who have been rehabbing in Port St. Lucie, showed up at Marlins Park in Miami before the Mets game, March 28, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA. New York Mets first baseman Dominic Smith, 22, is congratulated by New York Mets manager Mickey Callaway, 36, after scoring a run against the Washington Nationals during the 8th inning at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Brad Mills. USA Today Sports. Brad Mills. The Mets, 3-1, play the second game of their 3-game series with the Marlins, 2-3, on Tuesday at 7:10 p.m. on SNY. Mets notes Pete Alonso will start the night on the bench, as Dominic Smith starts at first base, a move that was planned before Alonso homered on Monday night. The Mets have recorded double-digit hits for 3 straight games. The Mets are batting .375, 15 for 40, with runners in scoring position this season. Mets pitchers have issued only 6 walks this season, which is the lowest in the National League. Click here to follow via SNY Game Day athlete Art, Alonso and McNeil. 0 hours 0 minutes and 54 seconds in a test of their artistic skills. SNY asked New York Mets players to draw their teammates. First up, Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil. In a test of their artistic skills, SNY asked New York Mets players to draw their teammates. First up, Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil. April 1, 2019, Miami, Florida, USA. New York Mets first baseman Pete Alonso, 20, celebrates in the dugout after hitting a 3-run homer in the 9th inning against the Miami Marlins at Marlins Park. Mandatory credit, Steve Mitchell. USA Today Sports. Steve Mitchell. Pete Alonso hit his first big league homer on Monday night against the Marlins, in Miami, a mammoth shot that traveled 444 feet to center field. He is hitting .412, .474, .765 in 17 at-bats this season. On Tuesday night, he'll be on the bench. In place of Alonso, Dominic Smith will start at first base on Tuesday night, something manager Mickey Callaway said was put in place before Monday night's game. RHP Jose Arena will be on the mound for the Marlins. Smith has come off the bench the first 4 games and filled in late defensively at first base at times, and has been a catalyst. He drew a walk and scored a run on opening day, had 2 RBI in the second game of the season, and singled before scoring the go-ahead run on Monday night. Reaction to Alonso's home run. 0 hours 1 minute and 21 seconds. All anything anyone could talk about after the Mets' 7-3 win over Miami was Pete Alonso's huge home run in the 9th inning. Pete Alonso's teammates told him to hop in a shopping cart and dragged him into the showers. "Just poured whatever the hell they could on me," Alonso said with a smile. That's how the Mets celebrated the promising rookie's first home run, coming in a clutch moment. Mets defeat Marlins 7-3, 0 hours 1 minute and 34 seconds. All anyone could talk about after the Mets' 7-3 win over Miami was Pete Alonso's huge home run in the ninth inning. Rosario hit a go-ahead RBI single and Pete Alonso broke the game open with a 3-run home run in the top of the ninth inning as the Mets beat the Miami Marlins 7-3 on Monday at Marlins Park. Greater than box score. 5 things to know about Monday's Game 1. Rosario broke a 3-3 tie with an RBI single off Drew's second rider with 2 runners on and 1 out in the top of the ninth. Alonso then followed with a 444-foot homer to center field to give the Mets a 4-run lead. 2. Edwin Diaz pitched into and out of a bases-loaded, no-out jam in the bottom of the ninth. After a leadoff walk and back-to-back singles, Diaz struck out Jorge Alfaro, Peter O'Brien and pinch hitter JT Riddle went the game. First MLB home run for Pete Alonso. 0 hours 0 minutes and 13 seconds. Pete Alonso hit his first MLB home run in the ninth inning against the Marlins. It was a huge 444-foot 3-run bomb. The polar bear really got into this one, and it could be the first of many. After the Mets had just taken the lead in the ninth, Pete Alonso crushed a 3-run homer to center field on the first pitch he sought to give the Mets a 7-3 advantage, the first home run of his MLB career. March 31, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA, New York Mets shortstop Rosario, 1, drives in run during the 5th inning against the Washington Nationals at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Tommy Gilligan. USA Today Sports. Tommy Gilligan. After winning their first series against the Nationals, the Mets travel to Miami to face another division opponent in the Marlins at 7:10 p.m. to kick off a 3-game set on SNY. Mets notes this is the second straight year the Mets went 2-1 to start the season. The Mets have been proactive with runners in scoring position in this early going. They are hitting .400 with 4 doubles, a triple, a walk and 14 RBI. The fresh faces in the clubhouse are already making an impact, especially Pete Alonso. He went 6 for 12 with 3 RBI doubles in 3 games. Wilson Ramos is also hitting .444 with a double, 3 RBI and 3 runs scored thus far. Click here to follow via SNY Game Day. According to The Athletic, the Mets continue to check in on the market for closer Craig Kimbrel and starter Dallas Keuchel, which I'm sure is true. However, team sources Sunday were quick to leak to several reporters that Rosenthal's report is a bit overstated and that the team is simply doing standard due diligence. I have no doubt that Mets GM Brodie Van Wagenen is always in touch with other teams and agents, keeping an open mind to any way his team can improve. So, the above report and response shouldn't be surprising because, 1. The Mets have available money in their 2019 budget, 2. They remain $30 minus $40 million under the luxury tax threshold, and 3. Both players would significantly improve Van Wagenen's roster. The thing is, if given the green light and forced to choose, should Van Wagenen go Keuchel or Kimbrel? March 31, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA, New York Mets starting pitcher Zach Wheeler, 45, delivers a pitch during the first inning against the Washington Nationals at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Tommy Gilligan. USA Today Sports. Tommy Gilligan. For the most part, Zach Wheeler's season debut for the Mets on Sunday was a great start to the new year. But he really wants to take one inning back. Wheeler's day began relatively silent. He had 2 runners on first and second in the first inning, but he got out of that jam. And the second inning saw a 1-2-3 half with his 3rd strikeout of the day to move on to the 3rd, but that's where the wheels fell off a bit. In just 4 pitches the Nats strung together a double, single, and a Trey Turner 3-run homer to give the home team a 3-1 lead in a hurry. From there, Wheeler would let up one more run before his day ended after 5 frames. March 31, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA, New York Mets second baseman Robinson Cano, 24, celebrates with teammates after scoring in the 8th inning against the Washington Nationals at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Tommy Gilligan. USA Today Sports. Tommy Gilligan. The Mets won 2 of 3 games during their season-opening series against the Nationals this past weekend in Washington, D.C. Here are 3 good and 3 not so good takeaways from the previous 3 games. Trending up 1, the offense is no one-trick pony. Nationals walk-off on Mets. 0 hours 1 minute and 26 seconds. Mickey Callaway, Justin Wilson and Zach Wheeler comment on the Mets' comeback before ultimately falling to the Nationals. 6-5 Anthony McCarron, SNY.TV, Twitter, extracting the positives from a loss is usually as palatable as digging into the dry chicken dinner usually served at a sports banquet. Losing stings, regardless of what might have gone well during a game or a weekend, but while the Mets squandered a nifty comeback Sunday in losing the finale of their opening series, 6-5, to the Nationals, what happened on the field during the 3-game set could resonate throughout the year as the two clubs try to navigate the upper reaches of the National League East. In fact, manager Mickey Callaway told reporters, the Mets' comeback put something in the Nationals' minds, even if that comeback wasn't completed. October 16, 2018, Houston, Texas, USA. Houston Astros starting pitcher Dallas Keuchel, 60, walks off the mound after the third out in the first inning of Game 3 of the 2018 ALCS playoff baseball series against the Boston Red Sox at Minute Maid Park. Mandatory credit, Troy Tormina. USA Today Sports, Troy Tormina. Neither Dallas Keuchel nor Craig Kimbrell are expected to sign with the Mets this year, but the team is nonetheless maintaining a dialogue with the pair of unsigned hurlers. According to The Athletic's Ken Rosenthal and Dennis Lin, the Mets have checked in with Keuchel and Kimbrell as a matter of due diligence. Nationals walk off on Mets. 0 hours 1 minute and 29 seconds. Trey Turner belted a pair of homers, including walk-off solo shot in the 9th as the Nationals edged the Mets. 6-5 The Mets made a late comeback, but the Nationals walked it off in a 6-5 loss for New York to close out the opening series. Greater than box score. 6 things to know about Sunday's game. 1. Zach Wheeler made his season debut, and it didn't go how it would have liked it to. The first 2 innings were painless, but the Nationals got to him in the third. On just 4 pitches, a double, single and home run were hit to make it a 3-0 game for the home team. Then, after a silent 4th inning, Wheeler allowed another run to come across on an Anthony Rendon RBI single in the 5th. Overall, Wheeler allowed 4 earned on 6 hits while striking out 7 and walking 1 over 5 innings. Alonso doubles home. Nimmo. 0 hours 0 minutes and 17 seconds. Pete Alonso drills a 2B to left center to score Brandon Nimmo and give the Mets a 1-0 lead. The Mets are going for the series sweep against the Nationals on Sunday afternoon, and Pete Alonso is certainly helping the cause. The rookie had 2 RBI doubles in Saturday's 11-8 win, and he added another one today that scored Brandon Nimmo. March 30, 2019, Washington, D.C., USA. New York Mets second baseman Jeff McNeil, 6, hits an RBI single against the Washington Nationals during the 8th inning at Nationals Park. Mandatory credit, Brad Mills. USA Today Sports. Brad Mills, Jeff McNeil and Wilson Ramos both had great days at the plate on Saturday, but Mets manager Mickey Callaway's lineup card didn't have either player on it for Sunday's series finale against the Nationals. McNeil didn't notch a hit in his opening day game, but he made up for that with a 4-for-5 performance with a triple, double, and 2 RBI. But, with a lefty on the mound in Patrick Corbin for the Nats today, Callaway said it was scheduled to have McNeil sit out and give the nod to Kean Broxton, who gets his first start as a Met. Callaway also doesn't believe in making his lineup based off what a player does the day before.